I'd like to get started. I'm Rich Vitale, and on behalf of PMRG, we'd like to welcome you all to the 2013 Fall Institute. We've got a great session, great meeting overall planned for everybody, and a really dynamic presentation here today entitled, Does Social Media Matter to Patients and Should Pharmaceutical Marketers Care? Personally, I think, yes, they should. And I have the pleasure of introducing our three speakers here today. And I don't want to do an injustice and miss anything, so I'm going to read from their biographies here. Really dynamic backgrounds. Soumya Roy is a managing partner at Holland Partners. Andrew Nelson is the brand insight consultant at Precise Media. And Todd Grossman is the managing director of Americas at Precise. With a doctorate in marketing science and an MBA in finance, Soumya Roy brings science and business together. He's a researcher by training and a marketer at heart. Throughout his research career, he has continued to apply his knowledge by working directly with clients and teaching graduate courses at NYU, the University of Pittsburgh, and Temple University. He has specialist knowledge across Salesforce strategy and optimization, segmentation and targeting, product positioning, detailing effectiveness, and brand tracking. Andrew Nelson is a research consultant and is the head of the healthcare research at Precise. His role centers on helping marketing and communication clients gain strategic insight from the vast amount of content generated by patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals into social media. Andrew joined Precise from Ipsos, where he was leading best practice integration of strategic social listening and traditional quantitative and qualitative methodologies. Andrew has helped leading pharmaceutical and healthcare organizations navigate the complexities of gaining strategic insight from social media, developing meaningful key performance indicators, and uncovering previously unrevealed insights. Andrew has over 8 years of experience in market research and 5 years specializing in new research approaches in the digital world. He likes golf, surfing, rugby, and cricket, which are all far more challenging than they once were. And just to update the bio, where he said that he lives in London with his wife and they were expecting their first child. Proud new papa today. So congratulations on the couple.
Thank you. Not today. That would be really bad, me being here. It wasn't Wednesday, so it's pretty close.
Todd Grossman is the managing director of Precise Media, where he leads the Precise U.S. business, working with public relations and marketing professionals across a growing range of high-profile pharmaceutical and healthcare institutions, corporations, consumer-facing organizations, and consultancies. Applying Precise's expertise across analytics and social media, he ensures that the Precise teams deliver effective, customer-centric business solutions and provide value and results to its clients. Todd has spent more than 20 years in new media, public relations, communications, sales, and marketing in a variety of senior roles. In 2006, Todd founded the Kilimanjaro Educational Foundation, a nonprofit organization with a mission to enrich the education of children in developing African countries. He completed his BA in political science from the University of Connecticut and executive education programs at Cranfield University's School of Management in the United Kingdom. He's also completed the Miller-Hyman Solutions Selling Program and serves as a graduate assistant instructor for Dale Carnegie. This time, I'd like to introduce our three guest speakers, so please join me in welcoming them.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everyone. Being a researcher by training, I always like to focus on the key questions. So one of our first questions is, does social media matter to patients? So Rich already gave his verdict. So I would like all of you here to kind of, just take a quick poll. Just lift your hands if you think, does social media matter to patients? How many of you think? Wow, almost everyone. And the next question then is, should pharmaceutical marketers care? Again? Okay, that's nearly 90% from what I can tell. So we have the answer to these questions, right? So my third question, which is not a part of the topic, but I think is of most interest, is how many of you feel that you guys are actively engaging patients in social media? And, pharmaceutical marketers over here. Okay, well, still a few, right? So why don't we kind of look into, to set the context, just kind of take, look at some basic facts. We know that our world is much more connected than ever, right? 56% of US adults use a smartphone, 142 million mobile healthcare app downloads by 2016 expected. 46% of physicians use mobile health technology. We know that 2.5 billion people globally use the internet. 81% of US adults use internet, and 57% of office-based physicians use electronic health records. So along with this sort of complete paradigm shift in terms of how people are gathering information and connecting with others, what's happening with pharmaceutical world? We know that the pharmaceutical world is shifting from a much more, even about 20 years or 15 years ago, it was much more product-driven, R&D driven, moved to kind of more blockbuster brand-driven, where R&D would provide a compound to the marketers and market researchers, and then a brand narrative would develop, and it was the era of sort of blockbusters. And what we're seeing, a shift towards what we would call customer centricity. I think this is a term that's been used by all of our pharmaceutical clients today, which is they want to all seek to be more customer centric, which is about putting the customers at the heart of everything they do, listening to their voice, and bringing it into not only just in the commercialization process, but to the extent possible, drug discovery and development process, right? So there is this shift right now towards being a much more customer-driven from pills to solution that we are seeing in pharmaceutical. Now, patients, as a result, are emerging as a key customer. And we know that the patients they're completely engaged and empowered in the social and digital media world. These are some basic facts, but essentially what we are seeing here that patients like to connect with people like themselves, and they are essentially gathering information and exchanging information, and in many cases influencing people like themselves through social media. Given all this, what we know...
Just to say on the does go back to the first question, Sunya, is to say, does social media matter to patients? And there's a whole bunch of stats there to say that it really, really does. And it is facilitating a whole change of behavior between patients. So one of the things that you do see, and we're all, myself included here, I would put myself in, leading up to the birth of the baby, I was a massive passive lurker. I wouldn't engage with other people in conversations because I was in this information gathering mode. So I was lurking and lurking and lurking. The second step, and social media provides this next step, is to become an active member. So where you've done lots of gathering information from various sites, often too much information, and sometimes you feel that you haven't got the answers to your questions. So some people take that next step to become active members in social media. And then further down the patient experience, once they've accumulated more knowledge from other patients and been through their journey for further, some of these active members become advisors too. So there's different types of patients within social media, but I think for the most part, we're all, for the most part, active lurkers. Looking at one example of a condition, we'll take diabetes. There's a number of communities for diabetes patients that have evolved over the last few years. Some of the main ones are three on the left there. The big thing I want to say here is that it's not going away. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. More active members are joining. But for every active member who writes something, there are 100 lurkers who are reading and using that information. And that information could and does inform that conversation with the physician. So for every active member, there are 100 lurkers. Should pharmaceutical marketers care? A second question. Well, it's still early days yet, but definitely yes. Looking at diabetes, just some examples of what some pharmaceutical companies are doing. There are some information portals being set up. So the companies are becoming more truly patient-centric.
Excellent. So essentially, the questions that we ask as a topic of this session were rhetorical. We knew that the answers would, every one of you would say yes, social media matters to patient, and yes, pharmaceutical companies should care. The question is then, the big question is, how should they care? What should they do about it? What's the opportunity for pharmaceutical companies to leverage this transformation in society that's going on? And what from Andrew's sort of, what the continuum that he suggested from lurkers all the way to advisors, we know that all these patients, there is this whole group of e-patients that's emerging. That's about nearly, if you think of 2.8 billion consumers right now on internet, about 1/3 of them actively get involved in social media to either search or provide information or exchange information on social media. So there's nearly 1 billion people out of 1/3 of the 2.8, about nearly 1 billion people are currently these e-patients. So what we feel that pharmaceutical can do with this sort of mantra of customer centricity, patient centricity, which is about putting patients at the heart, they can, first of all, they need to assess the full patient experience. And assessing full patient experience doesn't happen unless you assess them in context, understand their in-context behavior. In this case, the social space is one of the contexts where patients are engaging in. And then ultimately equip and enable them with better education, support, and relevant promotional materials, relevant being the key word. And then to enable empowerment, patient empowerment, with the right information. And you will see why this is very important as throughout our presentation, where engaging in social media in itself doesn't empower patient. It simply provides them information. And in some cases, actually, it's quite disempowering because they sometimes get wrong information. So this right information is one of the things that's in italics to kind of, that I want to highlight. And then ultimately engage, not just about brand, but disease and lifestyle. And then finally, which would expected result in better compliance. And we will show you through one person's journey, diary. As researchers, we started with, qualitative exploration. And in this case, actually, Andrew's team went and looked at, multiple sort of entries in social media, blogs and forums and so on and so forth to provide you with this.
To help show really what we're getting to here, it's nice to start with a story. So part of my analysis was to find some patients who had joined a forum at diagnosis stage and then track them over a several months period to see what they were saying and then work out what they were doing to tell the story. So we're going to concentrate on Mary. She was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in February this year. Between February and her joining diabetes forums in March, she was obviously looking for information, gathering things, but got to a tipping point where she needed to dive in and ask questions. So she joined diabetes forums, and she's become over time a very active member. She's posting 17 times a day. But that sounds like a lot, I know. But if you read some of these comments, she's made friends with these people. So she's talking about, maybe not football, but kids, other things. So it may look a high amount of posts. They're not all about diabetes, but this is becoming her network. A lot of her posts are liked, so her comments resonate with other members. So let's look at what she was saying before treatment initiation. When she was diagnosed, there's this huge shock. There's a feeling for, right, I've got to get my life back into control. She's impatient to get there. But there's a lot of confusion as well, and hundreds of questions that she couldn't get answered doing Google search. So it's all about what can she eat. It's about numbers, and diabetes is a numbers game, and she's confused about numbers. And some of the feedback from forum members is, you've got to get a second opinion. So what does she do? She seeks a second opinion from a physician who has more knowledge about the condition, who actually was a diabetic himself, which was really interesting to the other members. And she finds another doctor, and she downloads Blood Sugar 101, which is a recommended source from people who are further down the patient pathway. Starting treatment. So this is about 6 to 8 weeks from her starting the community. She feels there's a bit more hope, a bit more light at the end of the tunnel. But she is really concerned about putting something into her body that taking a pill is a big step. So there's a lot of concern there about what impact this might have on her blood sugar levels, because it's still all about numbers. How much dosage can she take? What should she worry about? Any side effects? Again, lots of questions. So what does she do? She takes steps towards self-management to gain control again. So it is all about trying to be that person I was before diagnosis. She asks questions about how can I, what tools and devices can I use to measure my low-carb, high-fat diet combination of metformin. What's the best way? And she's recommended Bayer AC1 over Rely On by a number of community members, and she ends up using that measuring kit. Starting treatment. This is, I think it was about May or June time, so she's actually starting to see the effects of taking metformin. She's more excited. The numbers are getting better. It's a tangible way to see her progressing. There's a more positive energy. She's still searching for information, though, and she finds Jenny Rule's blog, which is recommended by other patients, as a very useful source of information. She then recommends that to others because it's helping her. But then there's a tipping point. There's a moment here, and this is where it gets really interesting. She feels that because she's got better control of the numbers and the metformin's working, she becomes more confident. And it's almost teetering on complacency. And she's thinking, well, let's get back to the control. Maybe I don't really need so much of this metformin stuff. I want to be myself again. So she starts to become non-compliant. And she's making inquiries in social media about non-compliance, and she's getting feedback saying, yeah, try it from some. And these people are very trusted sources of information for her. She's downloaded Blood Sugar 101. She's done what they've recommended to her over time through the beginning stages. So she's going to try this as well. And it's that desire to regain control, and often coming across some misleading information from patients who are further down that journey.
Exactly, and this is what we feel is kind of a moment of truth in Mary's sort of narrative, which is that she actually is, when doing well, and she's feeling that she's kind of, her numbers which she was obsessed about, are under control. She actually becomes non-compliant, and there are people who are cheering her. You can see that, oh yeah, do that. And some people are saying that, oh, I tried that too, it didn't work. But it's essentially, what can pharma do? And this is, I don't have the answer, but I'm posing this as a question, which is, what can pharmaceutical marketers do about it? Where you are actually getting wrong information on social media, which can be quite dangerous in many cases. What is it? Well, how can you impact that? And I think that's a food for thought for later when we have a discussion around, what are some actions that pharmaceutical marketers can take?
So 6 months into her journey, Mary has got a better management of her numbers. Her complacency is, she's accepted that she's got diabetes now. She's no longer, she's accepted she's got and she's got more confidence because her numbers are more manageable. So compliance she's back to where her physician advised her to be. So what does she do? She is compliant, and now she's got better control over her numbers and more control over her condition. Some of her 17 posts a day are directed to newly diagnosed people who are going through the similar experiences she had back in February, March. And she's offering food for thought. So I did this, I went through this, ask this question, don't do this. These are the risks. So she's becoming an advice giver, or an influencer, if you want to say that.
So what we saw from Mary's story is her journey from really being a passive lurker to an advisor, that continuum that Andrew had introduced to us before. But Mary is just one person, but her experience is not unique. What we find is that, and through all the sort of the research and the analysis that Andrew did, and research that we have done before, that from this kind of qualitative sort of, ethnographic type of exercise in social media, there emerges a pattern. There emerges sort of an experience framework. And what the experience framework kind of starts to look like is that people have different needs at different points of that journey. And really identify those moments of truth is how pharma can impact people's behaviors and thoughts and feelings. And what we feel is that at a very broad level is before treatment initiation, that diagnosis through treatment initiation, then it's during, when you're first starting treatment. There's a different set of unmet needs that are emerging. And then finally, after treatment, when you have actually kind of settled down, you've accepted your disease, and you accepted that this is a regimen, again, in case of chronic disease, where you've accepted that this is a sort of treatment regimen that you follow, there are a different set of needs that are emerging. And throughout these distinct phases, people have a sense of different kinds of feelings. There are various different thoughts and very kind of cognitive functional requirements. And then there are different types of behaviors that people are engaging in. And so from our standpoint, from a pharmaceutical marketer standpoint, this is analyzing, this provides a sort of kind of organizing structure to understand how people feel, think, do throughout their experience, and then therefore come up with strategies and tactics to impact those. What we did was, given this kind of a qualitative sort of model that we emerged, we decided to do a short quantitative survey, and essentially to assess how patients feel, think, and do differently through the 3 phases of type 2 diabetes experience. Again, we took that diabetes as a case study because, again, there would be differences across therapy areas. So we wanted to stick to one therapy area for the purpose of this research. Perception of usage of social media and pharma online, some quantitative metrics around that, and then how pharma can provide useful information through social and digital media. Well, the first thing you can see is that when we went around, we had a sample of over 300, and there were only about 13% that reside in that space of that experience stage of just been diagnosed but still haven't started medication.
That's really interesting for me as from a social media researcher using that methodology. To find people who are near diagnosis or just been diagnosis stage for interviews or for focus groups are really tough because they don't know they have it, they might have it, or they've just been diagnosed. It provides us with more insight into that 13%, or we can get a bit of a larger sample. Yes, we're not asking questions, but we're getting information from that hard to reach or that audience.
Exactly. And most of the people, about 64% people who are currently under treatment and in some form of treatment and have kind of settled into some kind of a regimen. So that's essentially what we found in the kind of the representative sample that we gathered. One of the first thing we looked at, how do people feel about the diagnosis and the disease condition. And what you see is that we provided them with a whole range of words, associations, and we categorize those words into negative feelings, neutral feelings, and then positive feelings. And what we find is that as you go through the sort of experience of the journey, your associations, so about nearly 100% of the patients that we surveyed expressed one or more positive associations when they are in that third stage. So you do become more comfortable. You heard from Mary's story, more comfortable, more confident, and you have more hope and optimism, particularly if you see your numbers being, or your disease being under control. So the other thing that we found is in terms of activities, however, most of the activities reside actually in that middle stage, when people are most vulnerable, when they're starting a treatment, they're putting something new and different in their body. So we had a whole different range of channels that we kind of evaluated, and we asked people, do you participate in these activities, including online and offline activities? And what we found is that across the board, when people are starting the treatment, that initial stage is when they're most anxious, and that's when they're most engaged in social media. We also asked them about what's the most helpful source. What is the online source for these patients? And what we found is that online diabetes patient support groups, again across the board, but again more so for those people who are starting the treatment, patients like themselves, where they can actually hear other people's voice and really try to understand from others how they are experiencing not only just the disease, but their treatment regimen.
And those are the sites, Diabetes Forums, Diabetes Forum, Diabetes Daily, DLive, these sorts of networks.
And then we asked a bunch of questions around how pharma-sponsored sites can be useful to you, as well as how social media sites can be useful to you. And we saw differences in terms of what people said, depending on where in that experience phase that they are in. And so, for instance, when you're before treatment initiation, when you first get diagnosed and you're considering treatment, you're more interested around understanding the disease and the condition, and what are the treatment options, and also what kind of lifestyle changes can you do. And that's really where most of the questions focused on, and where people feel that they can get the most useful information, both from pharma as well as from social media sites, pharma-sponsored sites and social media sites. When starting treatment, however, it's more about safety and sort of unbiased information about the drugs. And what you find is that that's when people are starting something where they're putting something new in their body, and they do see most of these have some side effects or in their lives, and so they want to understand how safe is it, how tolerable, what is it going to go away, how am I going to manage this? So that's the kind of information, and one of the things that really stood out is this whole idea of unbiased information. They want to really feel that they're not being sold something. And then finally, if you look into after treatment initiation, it's again different. People are now looking into new options. What are some better options, new treatment options, as well as connecting with others. This is where people feel like they want to create connections. They realize they have this disease, a chronic disease, and they're kind of stuck with it. They're accepting it. So they want to now form their own network, their own community, their own set of people that they can discuss and talk with.
If you could just go back, Sumya, there, the bottom right point there, this is about diabetes. So when we look at, say, a condition like Hep C or other conditions, there are differences here where social media sites can be useful. So in some of the analysis, when I was reading Mary's story and seeing some of the responses there was an element of, let's say, they were less positive about new diabetes drugs in the pipeline. They were saying things like, metformin works. Do we need more? Do we need more? But if you look at conditions like hepatitis C or other conditions where the treatment has a massive impact on their lifestyle, and new treatments offer really new hope, then new treatment options are a huge source of huge conversation, and that's where social media sites can be really useful. So it depends on the condition.
Right. So what we see over here from the qualitative exercise, kind of the in-context exercise that we did, as well as through the quantitative research, that this kind of organizing structure on patient experience can be useful to identify certain things that pharmaceutical marketers can do and to impact patients' empowerment and patient engagement. And what we would like to do over here is take this sort of framework before starting and during, and throw some ideas around what pharmaceutical marketers are currently doing, as well as what they could potentially do to impact patient engagement, digital experience.
So before treatment initiation, how do they feel? Well, as we saw from Mary and other comments too, there's shock, impatience, frustration, and often denial.
And as a result of any, I'm not going to go through the quotes, but overall these themes emerge. And what we find is that what pharma can do to impact the feelings are really look at the psychological implications and tools and apps and education materials that help. Sometimes, in many cases, many of these chronic disease cases, as in diabetes, people feel bad about themselves. They feel they have done something wrong. Take away the stigma. And we will show a video in a few minutes about a company that had done a great job of that as an example. But it's really kind of focusing on the psychological implications, the psychological impact.
So before treatment initiation, what are they thinking? Well, it really is huge confusion. So many questions. What do the numbers mean? What should my diet be? What works for me? So questions and confusion.
And as a result of it, we feel that this is an opportunity for pharma to provide very simple, unbiased information, and simplicity being the key. Research that we have done across various different therapy areas, patient research, we feel that that while patients are often feel overwhelmed by the overload of information they have, they don't feel that they get the answers sometimes what they're looking for. And simplicity is one of the key ways to get to patients and respond to their needs.
So again, before treatment initiation, what do they do? So it is researching, searching, and lots of questions and gathering information.
And providing adequate online resources, easier navigation, and these are some of the ways pharma marketers can help patients in their digital experience before treatment initiation. I'm going to take a quick sort of a little bit of story of an YouTube video that Janssen. I don't know if anyone here from Janssen here. It's a great example of social media, one of the first sort of pioneers of utilizing social media and educating patients on social media. And as you can see from PRVQS, Janssen ADHD YouTube video attracts worldwide attention. By July 20th, there's this question: is it going to go viral and win an award? And so let's just take a few minutes to kind of watch the video.
All right, everyone, settle down. Now today, we're talking about ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. ADHD is a result of an imbalance in the brain's chemistry that can make it difficult for some people to concentrate or stay still for long. And it's more common than you think. It's got nothing to do with intelligence or motivation or the way you've been brought up, although your surroundings can make a difference.
Thousands of studies over 40 years have shown that ADHD is nothing to do with intentional bad behavior, but is, in the majority of cases, inherited. The condition can affect the uptake of dopamine in the brain, a neurotransmitter that governs a range of activities from learning and sleeping to mood and movement. This means that people with ADHD may struggle to concentrate and to control impulsive behaviors like fidgeting, talking too much, and interrupting other people. The condition requires expert diagnosis as it covers a wide range of behaviors.
Here we go again. I'm fed up reading this rubbish. Kids with ADHD just need more discipline. It's not about bad parenting, but you hear it so often you start to believe it.
It's not about bad parenting, but if you hear it so often, you start believing it. You can see how they have truly addressed the need to kind of educate, understand, a fairly complex disease in a very engaging, simple way. At the same time, address the whole issue of parents of ADHD kids are often accused of being like, you can't manage your bratty kid. And that's really what they're taking, that psychological, the social sort of stigma around ADHD kids. And you can see in a very simple way, they were able to kind of, this was launched in the UK, and very quickly it was, I think within 6 months, it had about 132,000 views. And eventually, there are a lot of sort of facts around this video, but essentially won a bunch of awards, and it's one of the pioneers in sort of leveraging social media, YouTube, to gain attention on a disease as well as educate in a sort of simple way. So moving on from before, if you go into sort of starting initiation, what can pharma do, and what are some of the feelings and thinking and actions that they can address?
So starting treatment, what do they feel? Well, there is concern, a lot of concern about what this medication is going to do to me. And they are seeking to connect with others who have been there, done that, and they're needing reassurance.
And essentially there are two elements, which is one is they're alleviating the concerns and truly about, again, the vulnerable. Patients are extremely vulnerable, providing very unbiased, thoughtful information around the treatments, and also connecting people, helping people. And again, I'll show you an example in a bit about how Novartis has been able to Novartis Oncology, it's a very successful app, the CML Earth, of helping people connect. Moving to thinking.
What do they think? They think they need some things to help them on this uncertainty, this part of their journey. They need some tools, they need to know more about safety, and how it's going to affect their lifestyle?
And essentially, it's about anchors. It's really providing people a tangible way to progress, to see how they're progressing with the disease condition. That's where they need some kind of a measurement. Numbers are very tangible, and we think that again, tools to not only just teach appropriate usage of when it's actual injectables or going to an infusion therapy, those kind of things, but also like the diabetes monitor. Are you checking? Are you using it correctly? Or if you have to check your blood pressure, are you doing it correctly? So there are different ways to again help, very simple ways to help patients learn and appropriate sort of ways to use products. But then also these tangible guidelines to measure progress, because patients do want to see that they're making progress, and they often seek for. You saw Mary's obsession with sort of numbers. Is my blood sugar level going down? And then also explanation of disease, and that's the example from the ADHD video. The explanation of disease, and then with the treatment, the mode of action, the mechanism of action. Mechanism of action can be quite complex. How can you really simply explain it to people? I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was talking about painkillers and why I shouldn't take painkillers, which I do a lot. And she was telling me how, and I realized that she actually doesn't, she's very educated, she's a principal at a high school, but she doesn't really know what the mechanism of action for a painkiller is. She actually thinks that it does something to the area where the pain is, rather than knowing that it impacts neural pathways. And I kind of explained it to her. She's like, oh, okay. Well, it's kind of like, and again, that's a very simple thing to explain. But there are a lot of disease and a lot of treatments where explaining the way it works could actually alleviate some of the concerns that people have around taking something foreign in their body.
So they're about to start treatment. So what do? It's a critical part on their journey, and they're really active in searching for information. But they also need, and it's critical here, search for the right doctor, the right treatment, and the right information. Those are the three key things they do at this stage.
Right. And I think, again, providing access to them, treatment plan, coordinated care, help find doctors are some of the things where pharma can impact people's digital experience. Here are some, again, examples of successful tools, social media tools that have that are meant to impact patients' lives during this stage. So CML Earth is one of the ones that I talked about, and it's a tool that Novartis has for CML patients, obviously, and it's a GPS-based tool where patients can connect anonymously with people who are closest to them, so they can actually locate other patients. And in some areas, it's hard to find patients in your community who have CML. So it's really an ability that you can sign in, and along with that, of course, is providing education and other sort of support. But it's also about addressing the need to connect with patients like me. Right? Here is an example of Sanofi for Diabetipedia. Again, an excellent tool where it's about educating people and really helping them. Anything you want to know about diabetes, you can essentially type in, you can search, and you can find information on any sort of word that might be foreign or you need to know, any kind of questions. And it's obviously around Wikipedia, it's a Diabetipedia. And then finally, here's an example of AstraZeneca, and this is a Twitter-enabled sort of to enable chat around patient prescription programs. So again, leveraging a Twitter platform and helping patients learn more about patient prescription programs through a social media tool. And then we move into sort of the final stage, which is after treatment initiation. What are some of the unmet needs?
So after treatment initiation, they've been taking the medication for a number of weeks or months. As we saw from Mary, there's certainly an acceptance that they now actually definitely have this condition. They're moving towards being more confident with managing this condition, and that can teeter towards being complacent and non-compliant.
Yeah, and I think the key over here is really helping understand how you can manage compliance. And is there a way to utilize social media to manage compliance, as well as connection with other people?
So what are they thinking? They're quite a long way along their own experience. They've gathered a lot of information from more experienced patients and caregivers. So they actually think they know best.
And again, it's really about frequently asked questions around compliance, disease management. How do you really kind of balance your drug intake with lifestyle choices that you make? Again, another example is AstraZeneca's sort of Crestor has a protocol where you can actually have access to nutritionists. You can talk to nutritionists and really get information around disease management.
So after treatment initiation, there's some patients will experiment because they've got more confidence. Others will stick to what their plan is. But the questioning and seeking for information continues.
Right. And it's about providing access to new product pipelines, financial support, patient advocacy group, and in some cases, like cancer patients, for instance, clinical trial enrollment, helping them, making it easier for that.
That's a really, really good point, because in other conditions where there's trials in cancer and Hep C, and there's a need and a thirst for trials in your area, the right trials to go on. People are, some of the more active members in these social media forums are emailing pharmaceutical companies to try and get that information.
So that kind of brings us to some of the key takeaways. And one of the first thing is obviously, as we, the whole point of this was to really, so social media, not come up with social media tools and apps or ways to engage in silo. Understand the patient experience and truly understand at what's part of that journey, what are the key moments of truth, essentially, that you can address and utilize social media for. And so we feel very strongly that looking at the patient experience and then developing a strategy and tactics for social media in the context of that experience would be highly important.
It's taking what we know as traditional social media monitoring, brand mentions, numbers, volumes. It's taking that to the next level and actually reading and interpreting and actually doing research with these conversations too. So it's moving beyond monitoring to finding the insights that matter. And it's also, I think one of the takeaways is measuring is really critical, and it's important to get it right. And there's no right way unless, and I think Nate mentioned this in his speech, if you involve the analysts who are doing the research at the planning stages or before a strategic planning meeting, if you involve the analysts and the researchers and they get a better understanding for what the outputs are going to be and used for, and you inform the analysts with the person who wants this research during the process, that collaboration will give us the right KPIs, the right things to measure.
And I think there are two other points, which is one of the things is that these tools need to be entertaining and engaging and relevant. And again, that relevance is about the patient's experience and their particular unmet needs. And then finally, we feel that, don't put patients into a digital bucket. Just because they're conversations and social, that doesn't mean they only exist in that space. And it's that comprehensive understanding of people and kind of going beyond, looking at, this is my social media listening tool versus this is my primary research, strategic patient research tool. How do you really kind of put it all together? And how do you really create the story of your patient's life, which is about what they're doing, what they're feeling, and what are their thoughts and what are their unmet needs in each of these areas in putting all your research tools together, integrating them. Okay? Questions?
So I think it's great that the patients actually start using social media in a big way to look at their treatment options. But I'm just wondering how it affects their relationship with their physicians. I mean, I can interpret this to mean that the patients are going to social media because they're not getting information from the physician, which is kind of putting the physician in a bad light. So do the patients actually, are they open about what they do on social media to the physicians? Does it actually affect their relationship to the point where the treatment gets affected. I mean, there's so many things that can happen.
Yeah.
From the evidence I've seen, when people are reporting back what their physician said, how the conversation went, it's enabling them to have a more informed conversation with their GP. It is also helpful to have a physician who's had the condition as well. That's a really big plus. But I think it's not a bad doctor. It's having a more informed conversation and putting suggestions towards the physician that he may not have known. And
I think, but to your point, I mean, we do see across, and not just this social media research, we do see that there's often a disconnect between the patient and the physician. You know, one of the studies that I recently did with neurologists, it was with MS patients actually. When we asked the same questions with the physician, the neurologist, that what do you think? To what extent do you think the patients get all the information they need from you? I think about 85% of the physicians said yes. And we asked the same questions to the patient, only 25% said that they get all the information they need from the neurologist. So there is a clear disconnect, and it's not just in neurology, in every disease, particularly in primary care, where they're barely able to see the physician for about 10 minutes. So I think that's a very valid question, and I think it's really that whole thing about ultimately empowering them with the right information. How can pharmaceutical marketers do that so they can ask the right question, so they can have a better informed dialogue? Because I think that is the role, which is enabling them to have a better dialogue. Because currently, if a patient goes and doesn't ask the right questions, physicians don't volunteer the right answers, right? So it's really that, in some ways we see that's where the role is for social media and any kind of digitally engaging patients.
Just a quick follow-up question. Do the physicians themselves approve of their patients going and looking up social media? Do you have any information?
We'd have to do some primary research because we can't ask questions. But the patients themselves say if another patient finds this conversation, and there's a quote, we don't have it in there because there's too much text, but it was a great quote that said, if somebody comes across this conversation, isn't that a good thing, that somebody else can go to a doctor and put this, to talk more effectively is great.
So you said that 85% of the physicians, they already...
There's one case here.
They give the information to their patients. How do they react to patient coming with a suggestion, right? Do they really change their behavior or how their, for the treatment options of the patients? Like, do the patient engagement in social media feeds back to physicians to change their behavior?
Right. And I think it depends a lot. And I know that's not an answer that anyone likes, but it really depends. It depends on the disease area, therapy area. It depends on the condition, how severe the patient's condition is, and how convinced the physician needs to be, that the patient needs to be on a certain path. But, over the research, and again, not in this research, but over research that I've done over the past 10 years, I definitely think that physicians have become a lot more amenable to listening to patients, or at least entertaining their ideas. And again, in this same study, we actually did ask, and I don't remember the exact number, but I would say at least 25% of the physicians said that they admitted that they're influenced by patients in terms of treatment choice. They said influenced, didn't say I always prescribe that.
I just wondered, you opened up the conversation stating that there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
And what manufacturers can do is help to get correct information into the hands of the patients. I wonder, is it just a matter of volume? How I guess, can the manufacturers in any way influence getting more right information and wrong information into the social media space? Because I think that, when you Google anything,
I know.
you don't really have control over what comes up. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on, how manufacturers can influence that aspect of things. So you can go and any brand can have a wonderful social media, campaign and disease state awareness information, but how can they make sure that, or at least influence getting into the right hands or at least having the wrong information?
Right.
I've got a
Top of the Google list,
Well, there's that, and there's also getting the message to a few that's then passed on to the many. And that few isn't a manufacturer talking, which could be conceived as selling. It's giving and informing somebody like Mary, who's further down the treatment path, who's actually giving advice. So it's providing those advice seekers who are actually contacting pharmaceutical companies already, saying, hey, we're here. Any questions? If they feel that connection and they're getting the right information, they'll then share it amongst their community.
Right.
And then the people in that community will go, right, Mary said this, must be right. And she's not going to send stuff out there that she doesn't believe in, but if she's got the right information and she feels that she has access to that, then that's one way. Start small.
Well, I guess where's the wrong information coming from? Is the wrong information also coming from communities, or?
Yeah, I mean, the wrong information could be the right information for one patient. Everyone's different.
Right.
So that one patient, Mary, was going to experiment. This other person, the experimentation worked for them. So it's a different. So she doesn't know this person. She's taking it from their experience. So the misinformation can come from other community members because they are different people. They have the same condition.
But I mean, I do think that, the point that Andrew made earlier, which is this trust, that people actually they have a sort of inherent mistrust about pharmaceutical companies because they feel that pharmaceuticals will try to sell them something, as opposed to these people like me. And I think, perhaps channeling through these influential bloggers and really understanding and how do you engage them and really kind of communicate to them that we want to actually help. And educating them and then channeling through them, because people do trust them because they think of these as people who are sufferers, right? I think you had a question before.
All the example you guys have in your presentation is all branded, right?
Right.
Do you think it's more challenging to manage your branded digital assets given we're in this highly regulated environment? There's still like a firewall between pharma and the rest of the healthcare community.
I mean, I think by nature, branded is considered to be advertisement, right? Rather than kind of, and I think that's probably the challenge. But I personally, I've done a lot of search and so on and so forth. I haven't seen any kind of branded information that seemed to be providing this kind of unbiased information. I mean, there is always obviously pharmaceutical companies are regulated and they have to provide all the safety information and everything, the side effects. But again, I don't have an answer for that, but that's a really good question. Is it possible to, in an unbranded way, truly engage? I think after stage you can, when that after treatment where people actually have had good results, and I think they want to learn more about the drug and the usage and the benefits and how to manage side effects and stuff, I think you can. But in the initial stage, I don't know. I really don't have the answer for that, for unbranded. Yeah. Or branded.
Big and small pharma was a little bit nervous about social media monitoring.
Right. Right.
Has that changed significantly?
A few years ago, I was doing a lot of this, listening to patient conversations and talking to insight people at pharma companies, and it was very much, look, we're not ready for this internally. We know there's something there, but we can't touch it. That was a few years ago, and there's definitely been a change in accepting this as, we can do this because their in-house processes are up to, they've caught up.
And that, the adverse event reporting is still there, obviously, so we do have to do that along with, whenever we are, there is a process set up for that.
Senior management was shying away from it because they didn't want to deal with it.
No, now we definitely see an interest in
Yeah.
social media monitoring.
I would like interpretation or understanding that made sense in basic psychological constructs. But I'm more curious about the slide that you had where you talked about responses were coded as positive, neutral, or negative.
Right.
And I'm wondering, was that something that you did as a human, or did you run it through an algorithm like basic sentiment analysis or NLP? How did you get to that determination?
Human.
That positive, negative, neutral, that was your research.
From the quantitative survey, yeah, we did it as human. We coded it like we would. But even when we do the social media investing, we also do it.
Yeah.
We definitely bring any human element to it.
That allows a little bit
Yeah.
of contextual analysis.
Contextual analysis, exactly. No.
No. you're reading what somebody's written, you're thinking where are they coming from, and you're putting a code or a topic into that with a bit of a note, and you're building up all those comments from all the conversations like that. Yeah, laborious, but you have to do it, and a tool can't provide that.
Right. I mean, I think that's why the whole social media listening, it's powerful when you actually think of it as an insight generation process rather than as a monitoring, tracking process, right? Any other questions? Thoughts, comments? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Just an observation, really. I think, I accept that your first chart was products to brands.
Right.
But I think we're overplaying our hand if we say we're now going from brands to
Customers.
consumer-driven.
Yeah.
Because if we're doing brands properly, we are being consumer-driven or customer-driven.
Customer-driven, yeah.
Customer-driven. And so I like one of your diagrams where you have a box on the side. It's sort of a box on the side we now have to take account of in building a brand. So we clearly can't any longer ignore it.
Right.
I don't have a question, it was just an observation.
No, I mean,
Be careful pushing the model to say the model's changing, but we do have to take account.
No, I mean, it's ultimately to make the brand successful, but, how did that come up? That at the same time, it's, but it is really kind of, it's a mindset change. Like when you're actually thinking about, your different marketing mix elements, are you putting the customer at the heart, or are you thinking about your, my brand, and how do I put my brand into the customer's lives versus how do the customers take my brand into their lives, right?
But you can't build a brand the other way.
No.
I think I've got, if you've got time this afternoon or sometime at this conference, it's really, really useful if you just Googled ePatient Dave. Has anyone heard of ePatient Dave? He did a TED conference speech. I suggest you watch that. It's really, really interesting. So just Google ePatient Dave and his TED conference speech.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much.
Jeff Jamer, Merck.
Oh, yeah, hi.
Chris.
Oh, yeah, hi. Yeah.